Afghanistan is defined by its rugged geography, its people weathered by physical hardship and poverty. The country stands at the crossroads of the region's most significant powers and has never been left to deal with its hardships in peace. Now, it's the site of the world's truest Islamic experiment, according to those who rule it. The Taliban, or God's students, have recreated the time of the Prophet Muhammad. The capital, Kabul, reduced to rubble by a decade of war with Russia and then a decade of civil war. It's hard to imagine a city which has suffered more. Death has been Afghanistan's constant companion. Between 300,000 and 400,000 children alone lost their lives as various Islamic factions have struggled for power since the Russians pulled out in 1989. War has buried between 1.5 and 2 million people over the past 20 years. A small pocket of resistance to the Taliban still survives in the north, but Afghans pay a heavy price for resisting the Talib regime. When they took power in 1996, the Taliban enforced an Islamic Year Zero. They banned all forms of diversion, from chess to television. And life for women was to change dramatically under the new order. They were to be prevented from studying and working, reduced to shrouds. For the Taliban, it was an effortless leap from the 20th century to the 7th. We are very unhappy that they've arrived in this city. It's not only me who feels that. A lot of others feel that. We hate them. I went to the city one day for shopping. They beat me with rifles, even though I wore my veil like this. They told me to cover my face totally. They asked, "Why are you outside? You have to be at home. Why are you riding a bike? It's prohibited according to Islam." One day I bought meat in the butcher's shop. It cost 15,000 Afghani a kilo. The good meat cost 16,000 Afghani, and the bad meat 15,000 Afghani a kilo. We bought the good meat, even though it cost 1,000 extra. There was a Taliban spy at the butcher's. He asked what we'd paid. I said 16,000 and he left. A little later, a Taliban showed up and asked the butcher for the price of the meat. He answered 16,000 Afghani. The Taliban said, "We've fixed the price at 15,000. He said, "Put your hand here," and he chopped off 4 of the butcher's fingers. In areas not under Taliban control, people reacted in horror to decrees banning smoking and music. They now knew even their children would be in breach of Taliban law. In Kabul, kites had been banned for distracting children's attention from the Quran. The Taliban were formed in Kandahar in 1994 by Muslims who wanted to bring about an Islamic revolution. Their leader, Mullah Omar, is rarely photographed. But if there's a single power broker in Afghanistan today, it's Mohammad Nabi Mohammadi. Most of the Taliban leaders were his junior commanders during the anti-Soviet war. He says, given time, the Taliban would emerge as fair rulers. They must be given a chance. Once peace and security is implemented, and law and order is in place, and the killing and anarchy is finished, I assure you that the rights of all women and men will be guaranteed. When the Taliban rose to the fore, Afghanistan was a bloody and brutal society. Thievery and murder were rife, and corrupt Mujahideen warlords vied for power. Many thought the Taliban and their conservative edicts would bring order to a lawless land. We too want Islamic law, and to grow beards as the Prophet ruled. Women shouldn't leave home. It doesn't look proper. This is the way we like it. In the name of God, I greet the Prophet and I curse Satan. You ask about the difference between the holy students and the Mujahideen. There's a great difference. The Taliban fight for God and peace, and to remove all other parties. At first, the Taliban could only be filmed secretly. Our judgment is made according to the Islamic Sharia and according to the book. When someone steals something with their hand, that hand should be cut off. Crime is much less now. 90% has gone, only 10% remains. Other Taliban deterrents are stoning, burial alive, and execution by firing squad. The Taliban's human rights abuses, sparing no sector of society, have brought them international isolation. On a Sunday afternoon in Kandahar, 3 alleged murderers are publicly shot. It's a spectacle for young and old.
They're killing some people.
Why?
3 people.
Are you going to watch it?
What?
Are you going in to see it?
No.
Why not?
I come here to do football.
After the Soviet war, fighting continued between various factions of the Mujahideen and the Soviet-backed regime of President Mohammad Najibullah. In 1992, the Mujahideen seized power, but split along ethnic lines, and in 1994, the Taliban movement, dominated by Pashtun, emerged. The Mujahideen eventually formed the Northern Alliance, under the command of Ahmed Shah Massoud. But to the Taliban, the moderate Islamic State which Massoud stood for was simply not Islamic enough. The Taliban are narrow-minded people. They know nothing of human rights or democracy. They do not accept any rights for women. In the provinces where they've taken power, they've closed the girls' schools, closed the cinemas, and smashed television sets. They even stopped ordinary games like football and volleyball. They claim these things are not Islamic. Without any real court or hearing, they've started to cut off people's hands and feet. 1996 was perhaps Kabul's darkest hour. Massoud's troops dug in to try and hold the city as the Taliban laid siege to it. These men were the frontline troops in the West's Cold War with Russia, but here they stood alone. Temperatures of -20 had slowed the Taliban's assault, but their rockets rained down on the city. In Kabul's hospital, the tale was one of terror and death. It was nearly midnight when the rocket hit our house. My brother's wife was injured, and he and his son were killed. The rocket came from the Taliban. I don't know why.
And this is a shell injury.
We went down the river on our bikes. There were 3 of us. I was sitting by the river when the shell landed.
Most of the roads are closed. No supplies are coming in. People have a very hard time, so they send out their kids to find whatever they can find to heat, to cook, or maybe to sell, and that they step on mines.